Hello and welcome to Happy You Asked. I am Erin Clare, your host, and today I have with me Dr. Matthew Zawadzki. He is a professor of psychological sciences at the University of California, Merced, where he studies how the experiences of everyday life, ranging from stress and loneliness to the ways we spend our free time, affect our health and well-being. His research focuses on why our minds often stay stuck on stressful experiences through worry and rumination, and how everyday activities can help us recover and become more resilient. His work has been supported by the National Institutes of Health and featured in the New York Times, Time, the Washington Post, and NPR. He's passionate about translating psychological science into practical insights that help people navigate the challenges of daily life. And when he's not studying stress and well-being, he's often on a walk with his dog, trying new recipes in the kitchen, or getting lost in a good science fiction novel. Now, before I introduce him, those of you who are watching video will be like, what the hell's on your chin, Aaron? Why is there this weird thing?
Mm.
Speaking of dogs, my beloved little dog was asleep, deep asleep. I reached over to get glasses, and she bit my face. My best friend bit my face. So
That's
that's
awful.
why. Yeah, it is. But well, let's talk about happiness. Uh,
Sure.
welcome, Matthew. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for agreeing to be on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. I'm excited to talk about happiness.
Yeah, everybody gets the same first question. What is your
Yeah.
definition of happiness? God help you.
Yeah, I know. Well, you warned me that this was coming. And the first thing I do as a scientist, I'm like, all right, what do I know? How was I trained? And I'll give you the scientific version that I came from and then why I don't like it. So it had these three elements. And it's first, like there's some cognition that happens where you think about, I look at my life, am I satisfied with it? My relationships, my job, my salary, my friends, whatever. And then there's this sort of like ratio of positive to negative moments. And as long as we have more positive moments than negative moments, we're in good shape. And then what I like about this definition is that it acknowledges that negative moments do happen, but they can't dominate your life. And so you take those three, you wrap them up with this beautiful ball, and that's subjective well-being. And when I first started this research, I was like, oh, this is brilliant. These people, it makes so much sense. These people developed this. I love it. And then I tried to think about how I would change that. And then I was at a loss.
Mm.
And like, it's such a good way of having a person reflect on their last 6 months of their life. And in general, is this how you see yourself? But if I'm saying, like, how do you become happy today? Like, that ratio of positive negative doesn't really make sense. We have good days and
Mm.
bad days, and that's different. And so, I was really trying to boil it down to what I care about. And I feel like happiness is a signal that you're not fighting reality right now. And like this is a
Mm.
very personal definition. I don't know how it makes sense scientifically, but like right now in this moment, I'm okay with how things are. There could be bad things coming tomorrow. I'm not ignoring that, but I'm not pushing to relitigate the past and ruminate about all the bad things or worry about what's coming next. Like I'm in this moment and appreciating what I have.
Such a very Buddhist revision, right? Live in the now. The now is all we have. It's very yogic and much more philosophical based, but they all come together in the end, don't they?
They
Right?
do. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
moment, is this moment okay-ish? Even if there's crap, like, your dog bit your
Exactly.
face, still talking to you, and that's good. It doesn't
Yeah.
make everything awful. So, yeah.
Yeah, and and I think it comes from even in these worst moments. At the core, I'm a stress researcher, not a happiness researcher. And what I love about this, even in its core, you have the worst chronic stress you can imagine for a person. Somebody's in prison, somebody's in extreme poverty. You're a caregiver to two parents with dementia. Even in these moments where you feel like it's overwhelming, there are still moments where you feel good and you feel joy.
Mm.
And I feel like all of that work has forced me to realize that there is about this balance and is about acceptance. And, you know, Buddhism kind of came from mindfulness, and I fought mindfulness so hard because I don't love meditating, but there's something to it that I keep coming back to.
Same. When I was thinking about that, I was trapped in the like Boston had all their flights
Mhm.
canceled and it was a shit show. And so it took me days, right, to get back with many.
Sure.
And I remember thinking, you feel awful. What do you do? There's nothing you can do. And you're like, Aaron, why don't you practice what you know? And,
Hmm.
and just
Oh, sure.
breathe. And Oh, lo and behold, it helps. But the ability to like actually do it
Hmm.
and not just, get tied up in what I should be doing or
Yeah.
what people tell me to do, but actually sit there and why don't you just do that for a minute, Aaron, see what happens, right? Yeah, that might, I resist it too, even though this is what I know very well
Yeah.
will work. You're
All
not
right. So
wrong.
does that are you an East Coaster? I grew up in New York City, so I think some of that hustle and bustle, that push is in me that fights the idea of like sitting down for a second, relaxing, even though we know it works.
Now, you study stress and in everyday life. What are all the different processes hiding behind that word? Because that word just is complex and could mean so many things.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's usually my opening question whenever I give a talk, academic or to my mom or everyone in between. I'm like, when you think about stress, what is it? And what I love is that there's both commonality to what people bring up and then very different components. And we could break it up into a few things, but there's like stuff that happens in the world that just it's out there. We call those like stressors. Like I got into an accident, or even less, like someone cut me off and made me feel threatened, or I have a deadline coming up. I mean, there's things out there. And then there's the way our body responds when we have those things happen to us. But then we get into a more Buddhist part of it. But even on when you have that stuff exist, it's how you look at it.
Mhm.
And the same event can happen to the same person, and we look at it very differently. But what I love even more is like today I can look at this event and be so angry, and tomorrow, whatever. And the fact that we have this potential for growth and or regression even within us to appraise that event differently each day is amazing.
Mhm.
And then where I spend a lot of my time with stress is then regardless of what's happening right now when we carry it around in our heads.
Yeah.
And that's where most of the things that we call stressful, that's most of what we experience is that we think we have this thing to worry about, or we think we really messed up and we can't let something go. And we just like rehash those events over and over and over again. So that's like rumination and worry, or fancy term, persevative cognitions, like thoughts that last.
Mm. Well, why do some people hang on to that and ruminate and have a harder time than others? What happens? Make the difference.
Yeah, so why, if I could answer that question, I think I would be a very famous researcher and would be able to cure people because like that's the answer. Because if most of our stress happens there, that's what we're trying to figure out. How do we push it out? And part of the struggle is that the ability to hold those thoughts in our head is very adaptive at first. That's how we learn.
Mhm.
I talked to you, I said something that angered you. I now know not to say that around you as long as I want to maintain this relationship. Or I went up and to do this talk, to take this exam, to shop at the grocery store, and I didn't do this thing, and it didn't go as well as expected. So now I know how to be better in the future. And so
Mhm.
that ability to rehash events in our mind is essential to learning and growth. But then there's some people that that step of growth doesn't happen. So I think about something in the past, I figure out what went right, what went wrong, and then say, okay, let's do it differently. Some people don't do that. And what they do when they think back in the past is just replay that same thing over and over and over again. They get caught in like a loop, or sometimes we
Mhm.
call it like a downward spiral because I have a thought and then they feel bad. And then they look at the world in a negative way because they feel bad. And that makes me think those thoughts again and just keep getting in this
And
dark
everything's
spiral.
awful. Sky's falling.
Everything. Exactly. And
Yeah.
there could be a genetic component to that. There could be some experiences where people weren't taught or encouraged to think about how to develop those thoughts. And with anxiety, even that last one, but my mom's a very anxious person, and I talked with her a lot about it. Even 2 weeks I saw her, and she's like, I'd rather hold on to those thoughts about the future, make sure I'm worrying about them because I'm prepared for it then. And like I tried to argue, Mom, like there's a cost to that though. It gets you worked up. It makes you not sleep as well at night. So like, yeah, you're not surprised because something bad happened, but also your day-to-day experiences are not so good.
Mhm.
But for whatever anxiety, that's a coping mechanism. She'd rather not be surprised. It's like called like defensive pessimism. You assume the worst, so then when it doesn't isn't as bad, you're relieved.
Oh my gosh, you're speaking my language. I know that one well. I know it very well. all the, oh, and if a tornado happens, this is precisely what I will do, and like
Yeah.
that's going to help me. But here's the, to me, it almost seems like stress and anxiety are one and the same. Like, where do they end and be like, what's the difference between them?
Yeah. And there are some people that argue that stress is just another emotion like anxiety, and there isn't a difference. And then some people like me who lean a little more on the biology side saying, like, there are things that happen to your body when you feel anxious. But when you feel stressed, there is like sort of to the core, every system of your body does something to respond to that. And
Mm,
so it seemed like stress might be this more ancient component of who we are before we even had emotions that figured out how can we handle what's coming up to us. And then from that, as we got more developed in our brains, then we developed more nuanced ways of learning the world, and anxiety became one of that. So they're like cousins with each other, but I still think there's some difference. So when you're
mhm,
stressed, your body will do the same thing no matter what, even if it's a thought or someone cutting you off or you completely bombing your proposal.
mhm,
Like your body will still work up the same way. Heart rate will increase. At some point, cortisol will get released and adrenaline. Your inflammation will go up and a whole bunch of other stuff.
mhm.
There isn't that clearly defined version of what happens when anxiety happens or even happiness. There's some biology, but it's not quite as fixed.
That's interesting. Well, what do we do to stop then ruminating and going on the downward spiral? How do we learn what we didn't learn?
Yeah, I do think happiness is part of that answer then, because in general, whether I'm training my dog or working with other people, saying no is not an easy thing to train because you
Mm,
can take away the thing you don't want to happen. Don't bite my face in the middle of the night. But then there's a gap. So, all right, so what should I do in that space? And if you don't fill that or you don't retrain that, then you revert back to some of those behaviors because there's nothing that you know what to do. And so getting rid of stress, I think a lot of it is not saying don't be stressed because that just doesn't work because then you'll just think about all the reasons you should be stressed, but instead trying to shift that to say,
mm.
okay, let's now work on creating some more positive experiences. And I think we should be careful here. I should be careful here. If we're talking about someone with clinical depression, that's different. Like
Yeah.
that's where we actually need medical help, interventions, things like that. But for most of us, 90% of people who are not depressed right now, we can work on trying to promote some of the positive stuff rather than just saying, don't be bad, don't be negative, don't be stressed.
So in the dog biting scenario, there's two ways. One is continue sleeping
Yes.
exactly where she was and just worry every night that I will have my face bitten off. That's
Yes.
probably not, right, a good learned behavior. Instead, adjust for this won't be. She'll be moved down where if I go over, she won't feel threatened in the middle of the night if she's deeply asleep, right? That's a learned behavior. She
Hmm.
loves me. She doesn't normally. It's not because she thinks I'm a bad person or something like that.
Yes.
That would
She
be
got
spiraling.
startled, probably, right? Yeah.
Exactly. She's a
Yeah.
little angel. She got startled, and it's not
Hmm.
personal.
Yeah.
And I think those coping mechanisms, like how we let go, that's where there's so many tools that we can employ. I mean, even thinking,
Hmm.
I said not personal, something like the four agreements from another yoga thing, right?
Hmm.
Don't take things personally. They're not usually about you. And sort of
Yeah.
that's a type of tool to bring in this awareness of how to stop the cycle of and everything's awful
Yeah.
and the world's terrible. Yeah, yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. In therapy.
Yeah, and like when you think about stress, like that's not inherently a bad thing. It's telling you there's something in the world that you should pay attention to. And that's
Yeah.
really and it's something that's probably important for you. So that's a wonderful signal. But then it's about, like you said, what do we do with that signal? And if we don't respond to it and adapt to it, then that signal can be bad. So
Mhm.
I'm worried my dog would bite me. It was a freak accident. The dog was probably dreaming about chasing something and then got startled.
Yeah.
But if you do nothing about it, that signal's there. Oh, maybe it can happen again. Or you could say, now I'm going to put a blanket on the bed. I'm going to ask you to go to that spot. And now that's going to be your new spot that you go
Yeah.
to. And you know that you won't do that startling. Like that's the coping stuff. So how do we take what we know is potential dangerous? And then how do we create some control around that?
Yes.
And positive states, positive emotions, are often what allow us to separate out from that negative signal and say, okay, now what do we do about that? And kind of put that better into balance.
And some people see it too, frame it in terms of like hope. Okay, so this bad thing happens.
Yeah.
What's some type form of hope or solution that will ease that feeling that things aren't right, that you can look
Yeah.
towards building? And I like framing it that way to another tool, right? Of just being able to say, okay, well, what do I do with this information, this stress,
Yeah.
what do I do now with it? That's not
Yeah.
freak out.
Yeah. So it's like, all right, this signal was not what I wanted. Okay, so then what do I want? It can be used that way. It was awful, but maybe I still got something from it. So like that looking for the silver lining in within it. Did I learn something? Did I realize that person's not a friend and I can't count on them in the future? Did I grow as a person? Like there, even in those most negative stuff, we can still get something from that.
And also that, I mean, allowing ourselves time to, just cry that your dog bit you on the face and then move on. Thinking,
Hmm.
it sucks. Feel it, that sucked, and then move on. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
And do your podcast with your thing on your face. But
Sure,
anyway,
sure.
another
You're a
another thing
champ though.
that you,
You're fighting through.
well, I got too many meetings to take days off for this to heal, and I don't care that much. This is what it looks like.
Hmm.
It happened. You've also studied leisure quite a bit, which is like
Yeah.
related but not related, right? So when you
Yeah.
say leisure and how you study it, what qualifies? What's this mean?
Like just like defining happiness. It's like, oh, I know what it is, and then you try to put it to words, and it's like,
And you're like,
it's gone.
yeah.
So I always, if I write a paper, I have to put it down and I say it's a chosen activity that you like it's self-selected and it's not part of work and it's not part of chores, but it's something that you do in your free time. Now, even
Mhm,
at the outset, that's really hard because on Tuesdays and Thursdays, every day, every week, I bike to work. And it's interesting because when I bike in, it feels like part of my commute and it does not feel like leisure because I'm thinking about work and I'm
mhm,
only biking because I have to go to the office. But when I leave and I bike, it feels so restorative and it does feel like leisure. So even the same activity, like for different purposes, it means something very different. And so like one, they're both potentially part of work because they're both a commute, but somehow in my brain I can separate them out and then they have different functions. So, so it's really hard to think about what leisure is, but I do think it's that choice is really important and um uh, not both the choice of what you do and when you do it. I think that that's the
mhm,
part that really allows you to explore some activity.
mhm.
And what I love about leisure, where I started with this, is, always the question is like, how do we get people to stop being stressed? I could say learn to meditate, and that's fine. It probably will work if you can convince yourself to do it, but it's something that's going to take months to get good at
Yeah.
and years to if you really wanted to produce benefits on blood pressure and stuff. But I want to give you something that you can do today. And leisure tends to have that potential, at least I think so, because most of us have something we love. And most of us are not spending enough time doing it, or we're sacrificing it. And so if we can think about leisure as a prescription that you get written saying, all right, I'm giving you permission to read 30 minutes tonight. And I know this, that's not always easy for people, but if we give you that permission, and when you do that, you'll be restored. You will be in a better mood. You'll be better able to handle talking to your kids, your partner, whoever. You'll sleep better. Like when you start to put it in those mental and physical health benefits, that's where I start to think it's really powerful. And it's not something that's going to fix you for the rest of your life, but it's going to fix you for today.
I
And I think that's what
love
Alicia's
that.
great. Yeah.
I love that because I've given a sort of happiness 101 talk a billion times. And from a different perspective, the context of cultural studies and looking at texts throughout history and how they would understand happiness and how to
Hmm.
divide a life, one of the key things that came up over and over is every single day do one thing that's just for you
Hmm.
to bring you joy. And that's the same similar type of concept that overlaps. And I like the idea of biking because that's for you can both be like, yeah, sort of work, but also leisure. And same with me for like creating yoga classes. I will do
Hmm.
that just for me, not because a class is coming up, but because I really like a concept. And for that moment, that is relaxing and rejuvenating. And other
Yeah.
times, if I have to teach, the next morning, it's not. But, if I'm doing it, I'm saying I'm going to do this time for me. Yes, it's restored. So I think I love that there's this overlap between it will do all these scientifically really good things, but
Hmm.
also throughout history, people have found that too. If you don't spend that time doing one thing for you, you're going to feel like crap.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I love the way you describe it too, because I think that's critical, is it doesn't just happen. So just doing the thing that you like, it gets you some of the way there, but you have to do it with a perception of why you're doing it. Like, I'm doing it to bring me joy. Like, that's my goal, doing it for myself. Like, so if I'm creating this yoga class, even though I have to teach, I have to realize this is something I'm choosing to do. I want to do this. I think it's going to bring good into the world.
Mhm.
I like to read a book, and if I'm tired and I'm struggling through it, then that's not really doing leisure anymore. Now you're doing work. And
Mhm.
I think that's a difference between biking in that feels like work and biking home. I have to get in by a certain time. I have to get to campus, have to go to this one location. But when I bike home, even though I mostly only just go home as fast as I can, there's the potential that I could do anything I want. I could take a different route. I could stop and look at the birds in this tree that are kind of feeding at night. I have that choice, and that then I can make that about myself. But if I
Mhm.
don't think about that, if I don't plan it, I don't create it, then it just won't have the restoration possibility.
There also seems to be something about freedom with what you're saying that
Hmm.
is part of it, like the freedom in your bike that you could go further, you could go over here,
Hmm.
you could go over there, and whether or not you do doesn't matter. It's the freedom of being able to do it, and same with whatever we choose that night, the freedom to be able to do this thing just for ourselves, and to go whatever direction we want with it. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
for me at least, that idea of freedom is key, that I'm not serving anyone at that moment but
Hmm.
myself.
Yeah. Yes. And that's also where I think we get into some challenges because I remember I used to have this line like, oh, everybody has something you love and enjoy, so just go and do it tonight. And I got scolded very carefully and nicely by some patient people to realize how privileged that was as a
Hmm.
phrasing.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I'm working two jobs and I'm barely able to cook, clean, and eat and do all this stuff. I'm a caregiver and my parents, I'm on call all the time. And so the idea of like taking
Hmm.
time for me, like I can't do that. That means I'm taking time for my kids, for my parents, somebody else. And that freedom is not always as easily available for people as we might want. And I think
Hmm.
that's a challenge to think about what we can do in those moments.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. There's a big difference between saying I'm going to take a 4-hour bike ride or I'm going to spend 5 minutes, in the evening
Hmm.
doing this thing, whatever we can carve out. And it's not going to be equal experiences and it's not going to look same. And even throughout our lives, I imagine it will not. There'll be times when we have many more demands
Hmm.
around us that then limit that time. But even if it's the extra 5 minutes in the shower, or just for
Hmm.
you and you alone, right? That's at least
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, and I think that's a nice way to think about that. Sometimes I forget that even just a couple minutes can really go a long way. And you're right, like really focusing on cleaning myself versus just letting water that's warm relax us and taking a
Mhm.
few breaths in that moment. We know how important that breathing is to relax us.
Yeah.
Or I'm commuting, but I'm going to sit 5 minutes in my car before walking in. And I'm going to use those 5 minutes just to have this thought or play Wordle or whatever. Like a couple of minutes can help.
And it's that you've talked about how it's being mentally absorbed in it is what
Mhm.
matters. So it is that what are you learning about that difference between just doing leisure or being like
Mhm.
engrossed in it?
Yeah, definitely. So when I studied leisure, that was, I thought, one of my contributions I can take because a lot of the work has been about doing leisure versus not, or doing a certain type of activity. So by far, what do you think people's top leisure activities by far when we ask them, what do you do?
Scrolling on their phones.
Some kind of screen time. So it's
Yeah.
TV or phone, yeah.
Hmm.
And I get pushback so often, especially as a person who does cardiovascular research, saying that's a sedentary activity. People are sitting down, doing their phone, scrolling, or watching TV. That's bad for them. And like, yes, in excess, it probably is, but that also misses out on the chance for how important screen time can be. And so what I started to do with leisure is to think about, okay, so what are the components of leisure that could be good or bad?
Mm.
So absorption is one of them. So when you do that activity, are you able to fully invest yourself in it or not? And the reason why I think that matters is because if I'm absorbed in this activity, I'm out of my head.
You're not
If
ruminating.
I'm not ruminating, and given that that's the biggest source of our stress, if we can break that cycle, that downward spiral, it resets it. Even if you might start it again, it resets you up top rather than at the bottom of it. And that's why I think absorption is so important. And we see a lot of evidence that when you do a leisure activity that's absorbing, you get that boost to positive mood. It lasts and it affects your next interaction with somebody. You're more likely to rate that interaction as positive. It actually leads you to sleeping 15 to 20 more minutes a night, which
Mm.
is not a huge, but if you add that up over a week or a month, that's actually the difference between
I'll
fatigue
take
or
it.
not. Yeah.
Well, that's
One of the, can I give a counterpoint?
yeah.
The worst part of doing leisure is if you feel guilty while doing it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was like, because automatically, like, well, you're sitting sedentary, and all of our guilt, I gotta move more, and
Mhm.
I can, yeah,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, that's not good. So, yeah, I think you're the only person I've talked to is given permission to be like, be on your screen for a little bit and chill with it. Don't feel bad.
Yeah, especially so do it, absorbing it, do it as a way to connect. So sure, a family
Mm,
can watch a movie, but then talk about that movie. Pick it together, talk about what you learned, what you liked. It doesn't matter what, but make sure that it's a tool for fostering social connection and not just the end in itself. If you're
mm,
going to do it to physically relax, that's great. Do it for an hour, not three. And so
yeah.
there's ways of doing that activity to make it be very positive. And then when you do
Mm,
it, don't feel guilty about it. Because what happens when people feel guilty, it actually leads to more of those negative feelings. So then you took half an hour that was supposed to be about you, and you took it away from all the things in your life that you're supposed to be doing, and you didn't even get the benefits from it. You actually feel worse because you
yeah,
didn't.
yeah. You put your guilt with your guilt and made a guilt
Yeah,
sandwich.
you
Yeah.
did. Yes. You have a little sadness on top of that, and it's beautiful.
Slather it. Oh, well, here's the thing though, if you're screening, if you're scrolling and it's just all news and doom and gloom, that's not going to work out.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
So you have,
remember, everybody else said, don't be doing that. All right.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, with all of these activities, they're tools. We were talking about that already. Like they're tools to help you cope, there's tools to help you restore, but there are ways of using tools that are good and ways of using tools that are really negative.
Mm,
And social media is amazing because it can give you new ideas you didn't think about how to reuse that old toilet paper roll or this piece of food that you think went bad, but you can actually turn it into a nice leftover. But it
yeah.
also can have that tool of making you feel awful about yourself and your life, that you have no control over anything and that the world is burning.
Yeah.
And so, like, social media by itself is not good or bad, but it has the potential to be used in good or bad ways.
I want to make sure that I talk about one of the topics that's most interesting to me, which is the idea of loneliness, because so
Mhm.
many people are studying this right now and how it's, so bad for our health and there's just an epidemic of it. But and I hear them, but at the same time, I work a virtual job and I have a little
Mhm.
cabin in the woods and you know, and I'm just like, oh, and I gotta go talk to people. Oh God. Ugh. So, talk to me a little bit about loneliness here.
Yeah.
What's going
Yeah.
on?
So let's think about the epidemic part because it is shockingly high.
Hmm.
So I work in university and I study loneliness as one of my populations among these students who are 18 to 25. And it's gotten to the point since COVID that you ask a person, have you felt severe loneliness where you just felt like no one likes you, you feel so disconnected? And two-thirds of the students will say they have felt that in the last year. And that's not just at my university, but that's across our country.
Mhm.
And that same kind of stuff is showing up in England when for a while they had their Ministry of Loneliness. It's prevalent and rampant. So this is a problem that we feel and we have to address. Now, what's interesting about loneliness, because I often overlap and feel 100% of what you do. It's like, I'm tired. I don't want to talk to anybody. And the idea of like having to make conversation just feel like the worst thing in the world. And I would say in that moment, then staying home, you don't feel lonely being home because you're home
Mm.
there to restore yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever. What loneliness is that I want to connect, but I'm not able to.
Okay, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Or
yeah.
the flip is that I don't want to connect, but I'm forced to do so. And so that means my social interactions are not aligning with what I want. It's that
Mm,
misalignment of what you need, what you think you need, and what you're actually getting. That's where loneliness comes from. And so
mm,
there are people who can be in a crowded room and they feel like they don't connect with a single person. So even though they're surrounded by people that might be their friends, and they feel incredibly lonely because they're not connecting in some way. And then people can be home for a week, months, years at a time. Some people actually love the isolation of COVID because they finally were given permission to not have to force themselves
oh,
out.
it was a good time for me. Let me tell
Right?
you, I was like, ooh, fun.
Yes. A lot of people who identify as introverts, like COVID was helpful in some ways because it didn't force social connection.
Mm,
And so, when we go back to social media, thinking about loneliness, what I think happens is that we think about social media that we think it's social. And there are other people that we are technically interacting with. But when I write comments to someone's post, or when I give someone a thumbs up, or if I stalk someone's Facebook page, I'm not actually interacting with them.
mm,
I might convince myself I am, but it's not a meaningful interaction. It's not two ways. It's not, even if they respond, it's not like dynamic where you're really trying to understand each other. And so I think part of what's happening with loneliness, why it's growing so big, is that we are doing things that seem social, but aren't at all. And so
mm,
then we think we're doing the thing that should meet those needs, but it's failing us.
mm. It's fascinating. You're the first person I've heard say the opposite. That this struck me that when you are being forced to interact and you don't want to, also is a lonely thing. And that's amazing because there's always this feeling that loneliness is the fault of the lonely,
Hmm.
right? That they're failing in some way. And this idea that instead it's a disconnect between what you need and what you're getting is really great. Thank you for that. Damn.
There's nothing wrong with you. You're perfectly normal.
Well, how do we have more meaningful connections? What do they look like then?
Yeah. And we can start with social media. Like there is a function of social media that's amazing where you can find that weird person like yourself who loves science fiction space operas set with, Renaissance characters, books that like no one knows about, but there's four people in the world who write fan fiction that do that. You can find those people and you can find then the people that make you feel connected. Or I live in Merced and my family's in Pennsylvania and New York. We're physically far away, but I can get caught up
Hmm.
through Zoom, through texting, through
Yeah.
looking at their posts, and then being able to talk about that. But I think that's your first step. That's giving you the people that are likely to make you feel like you can be connected. But then it's got to have some kind of, it doesn't need to be in person because that's not, but it's got to be some kind of like what we're doing here where we are sharing of ourselves, when we are allowing ourselves to be a little bit vulnerable in this moment, a little bit able to learn about the other person that we didn't know. Like that's what we need. And that's what we need to be able to push more, I think, to move past loneliness. So social
I
media
love
is a
that
great
idea.
tool to get connected, but not quite enough on its own.
Especially for someone, I live away from my family a lot, and so every day, we talk, and um, that's how we, connect, and it's
Mhm.
authentic. It's not, fake because it's far away. We're still the same people. So then when
Yeah.
we're in person, there's not that, I don't know what you've been doing. No, we talk every day. We know. And
Yeah.
that's authentic because it's an exchange. How are you
Yeah.
doing? How am I doing? Back and forth. We're
Hmm.
sharing something. Yes, as opposed to, this sort of feeling that we're watching a world and not
Hmm.
interacting. We're just sort of observing it and clicking buttons. Much
Yeah.
different. I see that. I like that.
Yeah,
That
and my
makes much
family
more
started
sense.
a text chain, and at first, this was during COVID. At first, it was really great because we were close, and then we slowly moved away, and so that was like for a year, it kept us connected. But then it became people just posting this random thing that happened, and it was like I was watching rather than engaging. And I
Mm,
think it's a good start. I can hear about someone's announcement, but then I need to call them and to say, "Oh my gosh, this happened to you. Tell me why that matters. Tell me how you feel about it. Let me tell you how proud I am of you." Like
yes.
that sharing of the emotion of ourselves, like leaning into joy, like that's so important to do to building those relationships and feeling that other people can restore us.
And also when things aren't going great, you can be like, I am having a craptastic time. And
Hmm.
being open about it and being like, I'm so sorry, even just hearing you, right?
Yes.
That you're
Yeah.
heard, that can be so valuable when you're feeling
Hmm.
alone.
Yeah. Some of the stuff that we might be most embarrassed about, that we need the most help from other people, we're probably not posting that on our family group chat or social media. And then even if it's negative news, it either people like doom spiral with us about it or be like, it's okay, you'll figure it out. Again, like through just random comments. We need a connection to someone to share
Hmm.
about why this is problematic, to start to help think about what is the good that comes from this, that to find a balance, even in this really negative moment, it's okay. How can I move past that? What did I get from this moment that even though it was the worst thing, what did you learn? How did I grow?
Yeah, that hope part.
Yeah, the hope
Feel
part.
it,
Yeah.
feel how horrible it is, and then find your hope. At least that's what I have to do, or I'll just
Hmm.
curl in a ball, and I don't have time for that. That's annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that was
100%.
one of the things that I took a while to learn. Like my family was a lot of like emotions, put them down, especially those negative emotions. Like let's not express them. And that's both family and I think some of gender roles for about, being a guy and masculinity, like don't talk about it.
Hmm.
And one of the things that's helped so much is that now when something's wrong, like I go out and I'm not ashamed of failing. I'm not ashamed of being injured or sick. Because what I love is that as soon as I share it with somebody, even a stranger, almost every time, like, oh yeah, that happened to me
Yeah.
or it's happening to me right now and I haven't told anyone. But even sharing that negativity can often be a way to connect.
Yes,
And you go from
exactly.
feeling isolated and that you're broken to now saying, we're broken together. I'm now not lonely anymore because we're sharing this together. And I feel like we can get through it.
Yes, especially like as we age and our bodies start breaking down, things like that, and it hurts, and you feel like ashamed of that somehow. No, all right, everybody's going through something similar. It might not
Yeah.
look just like yours, but everybody has crap, and we're not meant to be just we're human beings, and
Yeah.
that's what happens to us. I love that,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
talk to people.
Yeah.
And we all should have a friend. If we don't have, we should find one where we can just go and be like, I'm gonna bitch for a while and just
Hmm.
listen to me. And
Yeah.
then we get, instead of ruminating, then we know it's just a temporary, I need to relieve that, and then I can switch gears and
Hmm.
stop thinking about it so damn much.
Yeah. Exactly. And other people are really great at helping you, not just when you finish telling that story about what was so bad, not just going back to the beginning. Because
Hmm.
if you go to the beginning, that's part of the downward spiral. But instead saying, oh, I know that happened. And if they ask you questions, they force you to think about that. They force you to, process it. That's when
Hmm.
we move, that's when we start to grow. And that's where we can build some of that hope. We could think about some of that change, or we could just even just get desensitized to that negative emotion. Like the
And,
first time it happened, so bad, but now, all right, it's not as bad as I thought it was.
and people are good at that. They
Hmm.
are good at helping with that in general. And if they're not, that's the wrong person. Don't talk to them again about that.
Yes.
um,
Yeah, that's a person who doesn't care about you, not curious about you. Yeah.
or they're in their own, they've got their own crap they're
Mhm.
dealing with, and they don't have mentally space for you right now. And that's fine
Yeah.
too. That happens. Now, of all of the, you've studied so many different things. What's changed the most for you in terms of how you understand like well-being and how to get along in
Mhm.
life? Was there anything that you're like, Psh, that's
Yeah,
big
I
moment?
mentioned it already, but it was when I was doing this leisure work and I tried to make it seem like this was the answer. And I was giving these talks and saying, just go find your leisure tonight, take the time to do it. And again, really understanding that that idea is a privilege, that we have the right to pursue happiness, enshrined in our ways that we think about America. But again, the ability to execute that is a privilege. And I think that's been one of my biggest growing moments too, is to think about it's not just on the individual to be able to do this. And we talked about loneliness. Like you can't just blame the person for feeling loneliness. It's that person, but they have a social connection and environment around them, and the same thing if you're upset, unhappy, well, there's other people around you that might be either feeding into that or so wrapped up in their own heads, like you're saying, that they're not realizing they need to be reaching out. And then
Yeah.
all those people are part of a community, and a community can be structured in a way that helps people connect or gives them time and support to restore or not. And so we
Mhm.
can't just blame that one person. when they're not pulling themselves up by their bootstraps and getting out there, there are social and societal dynamics that are also influencing that. And so sort of
Yes.
learning that idea that it's a privilege to say we can do it or not do it. It's all on our own. Like that's probably wrong.
Well, and also say, yes, we need that, but we also leisure time, but we also need the structures to help people
Hmm.
be able to have it so
Yeah.
that, especially people who need it the most, who do not have time for it, who have, lots of stress with caregiving, or are there ways socially that we can help support such people?
Hmm.
And for some of us, that doing that and creating that is their leisure time. They really get joy
Yeah.
out of it. So that's a
Yeah.
good way of seeing it too. If you had, I don't have too much, two more questions,
Sure.
if you can believe
Yeah.
it. If you had the advice to give anybody on how to make their lives better, what would you say?
Yeah. It's going to take a little time to think about yourself, like some self-reflection.
Mm,
So, when I think about what I do when I'm upset, I first have to realize that I'm pretty bad at recognizing the initial hours or days when I'm feeling not myself because I've been trained to like put my head down and get through it. And that is so adaptive in the moment because you get some work done, you can push out a 10-hour workday, or, if I'm playing tennis, I push through any pain, but then you might be ignoring the injury that's starting, whether it's an emotional injury or physical injury. And I
mm,
think part of understanding pursuing happiness is just reflecting a little bit on some of the things that might be triggering these good moments or bad moments, being honest whether it's you or somebody else. And so there's a moment that I'm trying to learn myself of understanding, like pausing,
mm,
reflecting and thinking about, is this working out? If unhappiness or happiness are signals, paying attention to those signals and where they're coming from.
mm.
And maybe it's a simplistic, but I think it's an important step because if we're in a society that says just keep go, 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 we might overlook the importance of slowing down and thinking about, how is this going for me right now? Is it working the way I intended or not?
I love that. It comes back to, the adage, know thyself.
Hmm.
And a lot of people don't. And until we know exactly, well, how do I really feel? And is this
Hmm.
going well? And do I want it to be different? And in what way? Instead of just pushing through under that
Hmm.
layer of, life is pain, keep going.
Yeah.
Gen X, that's me. Keep going. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're exactly right. I love that advice.
And sometimes you need to put your head down and keep going, but know that that's a choice you've made and not just that you're doing it as a reaction. And
Mm,
yeah. And when you think about knowing yourself too, like what worked today doesn't necessarily mean what's going to work tomorrow. And so I think we
that's
need
right.
to constantly be scheduling this time to check in with ourselves.
I love that. And the last question, my favorite.
Mhm.
You get one song to add to the Happy
Oh
US
yeah.
playlist. What's your
Yeah.
song?
So gonna go with LCD Sound System, Dance Yourself Clean.
I love
Oh, you
that.
know what? That's amazing. Yeah.
Yes. Perfect. Ah,
So
I
when
love
when I
that.
when I first heard that song, I was like, "Oh, what is this?" Because it connected to me on such a raw level. And then when I
Mm,
really got into it, it's this long song, like 6.5 minutes, and there's like 2 to 3 minutes of just feeling like nothing is right. Like people are coming up to you, either they're angry at you or they think you're a bad person, and it just like I was like, "This is rumination and this is loneliness where you're out in the world and nothing's going right." And then
mm,
there's like this moment of like, I'm just going to do the thing I love right now. And in this case, dancing, right? Like it's just going to help me shed it all.
I
And like
love that.
that's like it just feels like, all right, that's our
Mm,
chance to release a little bit.
yeah, I like that. It reminds me of a similar song that ends differently, "Fool in the Rain" by Led Zeppelin, where it's like everything's going wrong. Oh, I was just
Hmm.
on the wrong corner. Oh, silly,
Oh,
silly me. Yeah. And
nice.
so you sometimes it's perspective. But yeah,
Yeah.
I love asking this question because people will, all these different scientists, they'll come in the end and they'll be like, oh, Slayer, oh, unexpected. It's and it makes
Yeah.
me happy to see, what people listen to when they're not
Yeah.
doing their science.
Yeah. That's
All
great.
right. Any last words?
No? All right. I'll be one. Be kind to yourself too. I think the self-compassion of you're not going to get it right all the time. That's okay. This is an
Yes.
ongoing process. And so I think give yourself some grace to figure it out.
That's hard. Be a human being.
Being a human being, it to make mistakes is human. It's okay.
That's exactly right. Thank you so much. This was such a delight. And honestly, it
Yeah.
made me happy. It
Oh, it's
did.
wonderful. Yes.
Yeah, beautiful end to my day.
Yeah.
And thank you to everybody for listening. I hope to see you next time.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.